Hello all, welcome to another endgame study of the Solving Other Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This composition was created by Oleg Zhitkov. As always, I suggest you watch the guide if you haven't, so you are better prepared for the practice. It's why to play and to win. The main countdown of 10 minutes will start, and after that, I catch you up with the beginning of the guided solution. And let's go for the solution. Okay, the position is simple to identify. The threat is of black advancing the pawns and promoting to a queen. And of course, with that, we are not going to be able to win. And of course, we need to see, okay, how can we stop the pawns? And the correct move over here is to go with the rook d8. It's a brilliant one, not because we are sacrificing the rook, but because it's very hard to find. So, this position, what are the ideas that we can try to go and try to stop the pawns from advance? So let's start with one. Let's start with the really bad ones. So instead of going for a draw over here, we are going to lose because, of course, black is going to advance the two pawn. It's the most dangerous move, continuation of any move from white. So we need always to consider e2 as an option. Of course, now the rook may try to check the king, but there is no way to force the game anymore. After a while, it's just going to promote to a queen, and now we get a queen against a knight and a pawn, which is a win. And even worse, we promote it with a check and a fork. So this doesn't work. And another option, of course, very bad, is to go with the rook to the first rank, so trying to cut the pawns. But again, we just advance the two pawn. The knight may come, but okay, how can you stop it now? So it's getting a queen again over the board. There's no way for white to stop it. So the first two moves, going with the knight b2 and with the rook to the first rank, are too bad even to consider, but okay, we have done that. So the next move we should calculate is going with the knight e3. Again, black is going to advance the pawn, and now how can white stop it? Well, let's say it checks the king, only the best move over here. Notice that over here we are already facing a draw, but we don't know. And so let's see how you are going to play from the black perspective. So it's black to play and to go for a draw from here. And for black to go for a draw, it's not easy because you really need to calculate. Because, for example, if you go and grab the pawn, well, this is easy to see. We just catch the two pawn checking the king. Notice that at the moment the rook is cutting the king from approaching the other pawn, so needs to move the king. And of course, over here we are just going after the pawn, so we can simply control the pawn. And even if the king comes, okay, we are getting a rook. We can even stop it with a knight. Whatever we do, we are going to win with this one. So this doesn't work. And the other option, coming to next to the knight with the king to e3, also doesn't work because we can simply sacrifice both our pieces. We can start by checking the king. Now the king attacks the knight. We sacrifice the knight, and after that we sacrifice the rook because in the end we get our pawn going to promote, and so it's an easy win. So the correct move here from black to go for a draw is to go behind the pawn with the king g2. So this is the only way to keep the draw. So now white needs to go after the pawn, so needs to take one. Of course, now we get a queen over the board, but there was no better way to do it. We need to allow this one, and the best we need to do is to organize our pieces, stay with the pieces together, and avoid getting checkmated. So we get a draw from here. Okay, let's go on again for the starting position. So this was knight c3. One of the ones hard to see. We need to think about also about the idea that black can come up to save the game. So this doesn't work just because black found the way. And another important one is to go with the rook starting with check. So this is another hard one. So black to play and to draw now. And on the previous variation, we saw that the best was not to accept the pawn, but now it is the best. It is the best one. But let's see first other potential moves. Let's see if we go with the same idea that we did before, go into g2. This just allows white to win again, because now we can control the advancing of the pawns. Notice that if now we get e2 over the board, let's say if I have here e2, now I can catch the pawn while pinning the other pawn. And of course, if black comes to protect the pawn, well, I can simply sacrifice, because in the end, white has an extra pawn that it's going for a queen. So this doesn't work anymore. The other option over here is going to be the king in front of the pawn. So the idea trying to promote, but of course now we bring the knight, checking the king. The king now tries to threat our knight, but of course we can sacrifice the pieces. We can just stop it, and now we are going to offer our two pieces, and of course after that we are getting the same idea with the pawn going for a queen. So this is the theme that we are not going to escape from that. So the correct move over here, as we saw before, it's to accept the pawn. So now white can try to stop the pawns with the knight, knight c3, of course, this is the right continuation, but now it's different. Black can start by sacrificing the d pawn, so promoting to a queen, check, don't forget. The knight is forced, of course, to accept, and now advance the 2 pawn, and there's no way to stop it, because even if you check, it's just a matter of being with calculation. The king needs to be careful, of course, but if it goes to h2, there are no more checks, and on next move, black just grabs the knight or promote directly to a queen and gets at least a draw. But of course, over here, black is already going after the win. So let's go again for our main line, and finally we see after this the checking of all variation, all important variation, that correct move is to go with rook d8. This is the only way to stop really the pawns from advancing without advantage. Of course, now it's back to play, and if black grabs the pawn, well, this is just allowing us to bring our pieces, and now there are no ways for black to progress. We are going to win this one. If the pawn e2 advances, then we can simply take the, sorry, if the pawn advances, we can simply take the other pawn, and of course we can black can promote over here because we take with the rook, while the knight is controlling the e2 square. So this variation doesn't work, so black needs in fact to advance the usual e2 pawn. So now it's white to play. Of course, the only way to force an interesting idea over here is to check the king. So until here, I think it's easy to calculate. The king now goes to e4. Where else? We need to attack the rook. And of course, the next move is forced. We can't go grab the pawn and try. The idea is, okay, I am sacrificing the rook because after we get a fork with the knight grabbing the queen. Well, the problem is the queen takes with check, and so this doesn't work. So over here we are forced to go with the knight c5, so protecting the rook while checking the king. So this is basic. We need to arrive here from the first calculation. So now the king moves. If it goes in front, well, this is easier. We just grab 1 pawn, and when the other promote, we get this fork. So this is not a really challenge for white. And so the more challenging one is to go to f5, of course. So now it's white to play. So it's another minute for you. Now the critical moment starts to be here. We need to find the precise moves to go on. Pause if you need more, and then I catch you back to go on with the solution. And okay, we don't have many options over here, so we need to go with rook takes the pawn, d2 pawn. And what? Are we going to allow the promotion to the queen? Yes, we are going to allow that. But let's see other option over here. If we go with check, well, the king just escaped to the g7 square or f7 square. And now when I grab 1 pawn, well, the queen arrives over the board, and luckily, we have at least pieces to keep the draw, but of course, we are not going to win over here. So the correct move over here is not to check the king anymore, but to go for the pawn. This was the brilliant one over here. So, of course, next move from black is to promote the pawn. And as always, you have the last minute. Go there, pause if you need for more, and then I catch you up to go until the end of this one. And hope you are enjoying, because you are going to enjoy it even more. What is the next move from white? Is to go with the brilliant rook sacrifice. We are going to play rook f2 check, giving away the rook. Of course, the queen accepts the rook. And now you wonder, okay, next move. Well, now it starts to become obvious. We check the king over here, and notice now that the king only has 3 options, and with all of them, we are going to fork the queen and grab the queen. If it goes up, we grab it with this fork. If it comes to e5, well, we have another fork over here. And finally, if it comes to f4, trying to be close to the queen, well, even if it approaches, then we grab it, and then we just go with our pawn to finish this one with a win. Hope you have enjoyed, and as always, I catch you up with future videos. Bye bye, and keep checking.